The morning sun rose gently over Maplewood Lane. It was a quiet, clean, and very rich neighborhood. The houses were big, the gardens were perfect, and every neighbor knew the rules. Keep it peaceful, keep it private. Mrs. Eleanor lived in house number 12. She had lived there for 30 years. Her curtains were always half open, just enough for her to watch what was happening outside. That day, something unusual caught her eye. A large moving truck pulled up to house number 14. The house had been empty for months. Now, a new family was moving in. Eleanor put down her teacup and walked closer to the window. She narrowed her eyes. A man stepped out of the truck first, tall, confident, with dark brown skin and simple clothes. A few seconds later, a woman stepped out too. She wore a long dress and a scarf. She looked calm, quiet, and very different from the other women Eleanor usually saw. Eleanor frowned. "They don't look like they belong here," she whispered to herself. As the day went on, the neighborhood grew curious. Some people walked their dogs a little slower near house 14. Others pretended to jog but looked at the couple the whole time. But no one said hello. Not even once. The couple stayed busy, moving boxes and furniture. The man smiled kindly at anyone who passed, but few smiled back. The woman didn't say much. She seemed shy or maybe just tired. Eleanor watched from her window all day. At one point, she called her friend, Margaret, who lived down the street. "Did you see who moved in?" Eleanor asked quickly. "Yes, I saw them," Margaret replied. "What do you think?" Margaret paused. "They seem nice. Maybe we should give them a chance." Eleanor shook her head, though Margaret couldn't see her. "I don't know. Something feels off. They're not like the rest of us." That night, Eleanor sat at her kitchen table and made a list in her small notebook. It was something she often did when new neighbors moved in. House 14. New family notes. Arrived in one truck. No fancy car. Woman wore a headscarf. Didn't greet anyone first. Look uncomfortable. She tapped her pen against the table. No flowers, no welcome mat, no signs of friendliness, she muttered. To her, all these things meant one thing. They didn't fit in. The next morning, Eleanor peeked through the blinds again. The man was watering the front lawn. The woman was sitting on the porch with a book in her lap. Pretending to be peaceful, Eleanor thought. But her thoughts were interrupted when little Lily, the 6-year-old girl from next door, walked toward house 14. She was holding a pink balloon. Eleanor leaned forward, nervous. Lily reached the porch and waved at the woman. The woman smiled gently and stood up. She bent down and talked to Lily. Eleanor couldn't hear them, but she saw the woman tie the balloon to Lily's wrist. Then Lily laughed and gave her a hug. Eleanor blinked. That didn't look dangerous. That looked kind. Still, later that day, she spoke with 2 other neighbors during her evening walk. "They seem too quiet," Eleanor said. "Maybe they just want privacy," said Mr. Clark. "I don't trust people who hide things," Eleanor replied. But the truth was, the new family wasn't hiding anything. Eleanor just didn't understand them. And because she didn't understand them, she feared them. That evening, Eleanor saw something that bothered her even more. A black car pulled up to house 14. A man in a suit stepped out. He carried a silver briefcase and shook hands with the husband. The wife stepped outside too. She stood tall beside her husband. The suited man gave a small bow before leaving. Eleanor's heart beat faster. "Who are these people?" she whispered. "They don't look rich, but they know rich people." Her mind began racing. Maybe they're hiding something. Maybe they used someone else's name to buy the house. Maybe. Her own thoughts scared her. But still, she believed she was right. They didn't belong there. Not in her perfect neighborhood. But what Eleanor didn't know was this. The wife she was so curious about, the quiet woman with the scarf and soft voice, was someone far more powerful, respected, and well-known than Eleanor could ever imagine. And very soon, that truth would change everything. The days passed slowly for Eleanor as she kept her watch. Every time she glanced out the window, the new family was there, moving around, living their life quietly. But to Eleanor, that silence felt more like a warning than peace. The woman in house 14 hardly ever left the house. Eleanor noticed she spent most of her time in the backyard or on the porch, reading or drinking tea. The man, on the other hand, was always coming and going. He would go to work in the morning and return late at night. But it wasn't the woman's quietness that bothered Eleanor. It was the way she never tried to fit in. In a neighborhood like Maplewood Lane, everyone made an effort to greet new neighbors, to join social events, to at least pretend to be friendly. But this couple stayed away from all of that. One afternoon, Eleanor's curiosity got the best of her. She was standing at her window, watching the woman water the garden, when she saw something strange. The woman had pulled out a box from the back of their house, a large wooden box. Eleanor squinted. It wasn't just any box. It looked old, ancient, almost. The kind of thing you would only find in a dusty attic, wrapped in years of mystery. The woman struggled to carry it, and Eleanor could see her face tighten with effort. But instead of moving it into the house, the woman set the box down on the porch. She paused for a moment, and then went inside the house. Eleanor's heart raced. What was in that box? It couldn't be anything good. She just knew it. Eleanor didn't waste time. She picked up the phone and dialed Margaret's number. "Margaret, you won't believe what I saw today," Eleanor said in a low voice. "What is it?" Margaret asked. "It's the new family," Eleanor whispered. "There's something strange about them." The woman was carrying some sort of old box. "I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me." Margaret paused. "Eleanor, you're overthinking it. Maybe it's just a family heirloom or something." "No," Eleanor replied firmly. "Something is wrong." The next day, Eleanor walked down the street with her dog, passing by house 14. She casually glanced at the porch. The box was gone. Did she move it inside? Eleanor wondered. Her eyes narrowed, but she continued her walk. She didn't trust her gut, but it was hard to ignore. That afternoon, as Eleanor sat in her living room, she saw the woman again. This time, the woman was standing near the front door, talking to a tall man in a dark suit. He had arrived in a black car, just like the man from before. Eleanor's curiosity grew stronger. Who was this man? And why was the woman talking to him alone? Eleanor couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. That night, she invited the neighbors over for tea. A small gathering, just a few people, Mrs. Clark, Mr. Thompson, and Margaret. The conversation turned quickly to the new family. "I just don't trust them," Eleanor said, pouring tea into small cups. "Something's off about them." Mrs. Clark sipped her tea. "You mean the family in house 14? "Yes," Eleanor replied quickly. "The woman never talks to anyone. The man doesn't even wave when we pass by. It's like they're hiding something." Margaret shook her head. "You're reading too much into this, Eleanor. They're probably just private people. I've seen the woman with Lily. She's fine." "I don't care about that," Eleanor snapped. "It's everything else. The box, the strange visitors, the way they avoid us." The others exchanged nervous glances, but they didn't say anything more. Eleanor frowned, her mind still racing. The following afternoon, Eleanor finally made a decision. She wasn't going to sit and wait anymore. She would confront the woman directly. She would figure out what was going on. Eleanor walked up to house 14 with a smile, but her hands were clenched in her pockets. She didn't know what to expect. She just knew she had to ask. She rang the doorbell. The woman answered, her face soft and polite as always. "Hello," Eleanor began. "I'm Eleanor from across the street. I just wanted to stop by and welcome you properly." The woman smiled, her eyes kind but guarded. "Thank you, Eleanor. It's nice to meet you." For a moment, Eleanor was silent. She wanted to ask about the box, about the strange visitor in the black suit, but she didn't know how to bring it up. But the woman seemed to sense her discomfort. "Is there something on your mind?" she asked gently. Eleanor's throat tightened. She had to know the truth. I just noticed a box you were carrying the other day," Eleanor said carefully. "It looked old. I was just curious. What's in it?" The woman's expression didn't change. "It's something very personal," she said softly. "A family memory." Eleanor didn't know whether to believe her. A family memory. It just seemed strange. The woman's smile faded slightly. "Sometimes, Eleanor," she said in a calm voice, "things aren't always what they seem. Not everything needs to be explained." Eleanor felt a strange chill run down her spine. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but she definitely didn't expect this calm, quiet response. Before Eleanor could speak again, the woman stepped back, closing the door gently. As Eleanor walked back to her house, her mind was spinning. She felt like she was missing something important. The mystery of the box, the visitors, and the silence were becoming too much to ignore. But she still didn't understand. What was the woman hiding? And why did she feel like she'd just uncovered a secret she wasn't meant to know? The days grew warmer, and the tension in the neighborhood seemed to rise with each passing hour. It wasn't just Eleanor anymore. Everyone had begun to notice the quiet couple in House 14. Neighbors started whispering in hushed tones at the mailbox or during their morning jogs. What was going on with them? What was really happening behind those closed doors? Eleanor had been right about one thing. The couple wasn't acting like everyone else. The other neighbors began to notice too. One afternoon, Mrs. Clark stood at the sidewalk, chatting with Eleanor as usual. "I just don't know about them," Mrs. Clark said, glancing over at House 14. "They've been here for weeks and still haven't come to a single neighborhood gathering. That's not normal." Eleanor nodded. "I told you. There's something wrong. They don't fit in with the rest of us." Mrs. Clark looked down, unsure. "Maybe we're being too harsh, Eleanor. We don't really know them." But Eleanor was certain. They're hiding something. Over the next few days, rumors spread like wildfire. It wasn't just Eleanor now. People were starting to talk openly. At the coffee shop down the street, Mr. Thompson, who had been more neutral, now joined in the conversation. "I heard the man in House 14 has a criminal record," he whispered to a friend. Though Eleanor was sitting close enough to overhear, "That's why they're avoiding everyone. They don't want anyone to know." Eleanor's eyes widened. A criminal record. The idea took root in her mind like a seed. She didn't trust that couple before, but now she had something concrete to think about. Maybe they were hiding more than she imagined. But not everyone in the neighborhood shared Eleanor's view. Margaret, always more optimistic, didn't think the rumors were true. "I don't know why everyone is acting like this," Margaret said one evening, walking with Eleanor down the street. "It's just a quiet couple trying to live their life. They don't deserve all this talk." Eleanor shot her a sharp look. "Margaret, don't be naive. You haven't seen what I've seen. They never show up at any events. No one knows anything about them. And now I hear rumors about a criminal record. That's a red flag." Margaret shook her head. "Just because someone's different doesn't mean they're dangerous, Eleanor." But Eleanor wasn't listening anymore. She was more focused than ever on finding answers. The more people whispered, the more she felt her suspicion was right. Something was off with the new family. It wasn't long before Lily, the young girl who had been friends with the wife, came running up to Eleanor one afternoon. "Hi, Mrs. Eleanor." Lily called out cheerfully. "Guess what?" Eleanor smiled, trying to hide the worry that had been creeping into her thoughts. "What is it, sweetie?" Lily held out a drawing she had made. "I made this for the lady in House 14. She said I could come over tomorrow for tea." Eleanor's heart stopped. Tea. The quiet woman who never spoke to anyone else was going to have tea with Lily. Something about that didn't sit right with Eleanor. Was it a trick? Was Lily being used somehow? "You're going to have tea with her?" Eleanor asked, her voice steady but anxious. "Yeah," Lily said, excited. "She said we could talk about my school and my dog. She's so nice, Mrs. Eleanor. She's not like the people who talk about her." Eleanor's mouth went dry. Lily was just a child, trusting the woman. But was the woman really who she appeared to be? That evening, Eleanor stood at her window again, staring at House 14. The shadows of the evening stretched long across the front yard. The woman in House 14 was sitting on her porch, looking out at the street, as if she knew people were watching her. Eleanor caught a glimpse of her eyes, a deep sadness hidden beneath her calm expression. It made Eleanor pause. Maybe she had been too harsh. Maybe the woman wasn't hiding anything at all. Maybe she was just lonely. Maybe they were all just afraid of something different. But no matter how much she doubted her own judgment, the doubts only grew stronger. The next morning, the tension in the neighborhood reached its breaking point. Mrs. Clark had a conversation with Eleanor as she watered her garden. "I've been hearing a lot of things, Eleanor," Mrs. Clark said, clearly worried. "People are saying things we can't just ignore. Some neighbors think they shouldn't be here. They don't feel safe." Eleanor felt a chill run through her. "I told you. I knew something wasn't right." "They don't belong here," Mrs. Clark continued, glancing around nervously. "This place was always quiet. No surprises, no secrets." Eleanor's voice shook slightly. "They're strangers to us. What are they hiding? Why won't they talk to anyone?" That afternoon, Eleanor decided to confront the woman again. She had to know the truth. She couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. She walked to House 14, her heart pounding. This time, she wouldn't back down. The woman opened the door, her soft smile still there, but her eyes were more tired than before. "Hello again," the woman said politely. "What can I do for you?" Eleanor stood there for a moment, unsure of where to start. "I've been thinking," Eleanor began, her voice shaking slightly. "I've heard rumors. People say you don't belong here, that you're hiding something." The woman's smile faded and her eyes darkened. "I don't think you know what you're saying, Eleanor. These rumors, they aren't true." Eleanor pushed forward, desperate for answers. "Why don't you talk to anyone? Why are you so secretive?" The woman's face hardened. She took a deep breath, her calm voice returning. "I'm not the one hiding, Eleanor, but maybe you're hiding from the truth. Maybe it's not about me." Eleanor froze. For the first time, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something much bigger than herself. But before she could speak, the woman closed the door softly. Eleanor stared at the door, her mind spinning. What had she just heard? Eleanor stood frozen on the porch of House 14, her thoughts racing after the door closed. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just missed something important. The woman's words echoed in her mind. Maybe it's not about me. Was the woman trying to tell her something? Was there a deeper truth she wasn't seeing? For the next few days, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. She couldn't understand why the woman seemed so calm, like she was hiding something bigger, something that Eleanor wasn't prepared for. Then, one morning, Eleanor saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A black car pulled up in front of House 14. It wasn't a regular car. This one had tinted windows, a sleek body, and a polished finish. Eleanor had seen that car before. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He was wearing a sharp suit, his face serious and controlled. As he stepped onto the pavement, Eleanor's eyes narrowed. He looked important, powerful, and the way he walked, with confidence and authority, made Eleanor's pulse quicken. The woman from House 14 stepped out to greet him. She was calm, but there was something in her posture, something that suggested respect. No, more than respect. Fear. The man nodded to the woman before walking toward the front door. The woman followed him closely, her expression guarded, but Eleanor could see the slight tension in her shoulders. Eleanor's mind was racing. Who was this man? What was he doing here? She grabbed her phone and quickly dialed Margaret. "Margaret, you won't believe what I saw," Eleanor said, her voice low and urgent. "A man just arrived. He's not like the others. He's wearing a suit, and he walked with such confidence, like he's in charge of everything." Margaret's voice was calm, but Eleanor could hear a hint of concern. "Eleanor, maybe he's just a business associate. The woman could have some important connections." "I don't think so," Eleanor replied, her voice sharp. The way she looked at him, it was like she was afraid of him. "She's hiding something, Margaret." "I know it." The next day, Eleanor couldn't resist. She decided to watch from her window again, just to see what would happen next. Around midday, the door to House 14 opened again, but this time, Eleanor wasn't ready for what she saw. The man from the black car was standing at the top of the driveway, talking to the woman. She was speaking softly, but Eleanor could hear nothing through the glass. The conversation seemed tense, too tense. The man's posture was rigid, his voice low and controlled, and the woman seemed to be nodding, agreeing with whatever he was saying. But then something happened that made Eleanor's heart race with fear. The man reached into his suit jacket, pulled out something small, and handed it to the woman. The woman's hand trembled as she took it. Eleanor couldn't see clearly, but she could make out one thing. The object the man handed her looked like an envelope. But it wasn't just any envelope. It was thick, and from the way the woman held it, it seemed important. Was it a letter, or something more dangerous? Eleanor's mind was spinning. She had to know what was inside that envelope. There was no way she could let it go. But how could she find out? Her heart pounded as she watched the woman walk back into the house, the mysterious envelope in her hands. Eleanor felt a strange sense of urgency, like she was on the edge of discovering something that could change everything. As the afternoon stretched on, Eleanor finally made up her mind. She would get answers, no matter what. She walked down the street, her steps deliberate and slow. She couldn't let her suspicions control her anymore. It was time to take matters into her own hands. When she reached House 14, she stopped at the gate. She knew she had to be careful. She didn't want to make things worse, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. She rang the doorbell. After a long moment, the door opened. The woman stood there, her face blank but polite. "Hello, Eleanor," she said softly. "What can I do for you today?" Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She had to stay calm. She had to stay in control. "I just wanted to apologize for earlier," Eleanor said, forcing a smile. "I've been a little too curious. I just wanted to stop by and make sure everything's okay." The woman raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything for a moment. Then, with a slight nod, she stepped back, motioning for Eleanor to come in. "Thank you," the woman said quietly. "I'm sure you're just concerned. Please, come inside." Eleanor hesitated, but then stepped forward. As she walked through the door, she felt a strange sense of unease settle over her. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. The woman led Eleanor into the living room. It was a spacious room, furnished tastefully but with an air of quietness, like the house itself was holding its breath. "I know you've been wondering about me," the woman said, sitting on a chair, "but some things are better left undisturbed." Eleanor felt the weight of her words. "I don't understand. Why all the secrecy? Who is that man who came yesterday?" The woman's eyes flickered with something Eleanor couldn't identify. "He's not someone you need to worry about." But Eleanor wasn't ready to let it go. "But I do worry. You can't just keep people in the dark." The woman stood up, her voice calm but firm. "Sometimes, Eleanor, things are complicated. You'll understand when the time is right. But for now, you need to trust me when I say, some questions are better left unanswered." Eleanor stared at her, trying to understand. The woman's words felt like a warning, a challenge. What was she really hiding? As Eleanor left the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that the woman had just given her a puzzle with no pieces. But one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. The more she dug, the deeper the mystery became. And with every answer, more questions seemed to appear. The days following Eleanor's visit to House 14 were heavy with silence. No one saw the woman outside. No one saw the man in the black suit. The neighborhood felt unusually quiet, like the calm before a storm. Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with the woman. Something was bothering her, something in the woman's tone, the way she said, "Some questions are better left unanswered." It was as if she knew Eleanor was getting closer to the truth. Every time Eleanor walked past House 14, she felt an invisible pull, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover something. Then, one afternoon, just when Eleanor thought the mystery would consume her entirely, she saw something she hadn't expected. A knock on the door, but it wasn't the woman answering this time. It was the tall man in the dark suit. Eleanor's heart raced. She had never seen him leave the house. But now, there he was, standing at the gate, looking out at the street with a distant, almost calculating gaze. He didn't seem to notice Eleanor watching from her window. Curiosity gnawed at her. She had to know what was going on. Later that evening, as Eleanor sat by her window, she saw something she wasn't prepared for. The man from House 14 was standing on the porch. But this time, he wasn't alone. He was speaking with a group of men, all dressed in black suits, all looking just as serious as he was. The conversation was tense. Eleanor could see their hands moving, their voices rising in anger, though she couldn't hear what they were saying. Suddenly, the man from the black car turned and walked toward the street, heading toward the row of trees at the edge of the neighborhood. Eleanor couldn't wait any longer. She grabbed her jacket, making sure no one could see her, and quietly left her house. She followed the man from a safe distance, her footsteps light on the quiet street. As she walked, she felt the strange sense of unease wash over her again. She wasn't sure what she was hoping to find, but something told her she had to keep moving. The man stopped just at the edge of the trees and looked around, checking if anyone was watching. Eleanor crouched behind a bush, holding her breath. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, thick with papers. He handed it to another man who had appeared out of nowhere, their exchange quick and quiet. Eleanor's heart beat faster. What was in that folder? The man in the black suit seemed to nod, acknowledging something Eleanor couldn't hear, before both men disappeared into the trees, vanishing from view. Eleanor stayed hidden for several minutes, her heart pounding in her chest. She had seen enough. The man in the black suit, the folder, the secretive exchange, it was all connected. This wasn't just a quiet couple trying to keep to themselves. This was something bigger. The next morning, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that the pieces were starting to come together, but there was still so much she didn't know. That afternoon, she saw something that made her stomach drop. The woman from House 14 was standing at the bus stop, holding a small suitcase. She wasn't dressed like she was going on vacation. She looked almost like she was leaving for good. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. Was she leaving? Why now, after all the secrets had been uncovered? Eleanor wasted no time. She rushed outside, trying not to be seen as she approached the bus stop. "Excuse me," Eleanor called, her voice a little louder than she intended. "Where are you going?" The woman turned slowly, her expression unreadable. For the first time, Eleanor saw something in her eyes, something vulnerable, something she hadn't expected. "I'm leaving," the woman said softly. "It's the only way." Eleanor took a step closer. "Leaving? Why? What's really going on with you and your husband? What are you hiding?" The woman hesitated, her eyes flickering to the ground. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something, but then her gaze lifted again, and she spoke in a quiet but firm tone. "Some stories are meant to stay buried, Eleanor, and some people can't handle the truth." The bus arrived just then, and the woman stepped back, her eyes never leaving Eleanor's. She gave a brief nod before getting on, the door closing behind her. Eleanor stood frozen for a moment. What had the woman meant? Was she leaving because she was afraid? Was there a hidden danger, or was she just a woman trapped in a situation she couldn't escape? That evening, Eleanor couldn't stop replaying the conversation in her mind. She had learned nothing new, yet she felt like something was finally starting to click. She returned to her window once more, gazing at House 14, now eerily empty. The street was quiet, as it always was at night, but something about it felt different. The mystery that had been lingering in the neighborhood seemed to have reached its peak. Whatever had been hidden was about to come to light. The following morning, Eleanor received an unexpected phone call. "Hello, Eleanor," a deep voice said on the other end. "I think it's time we talk." It was the man in the black suit. Eleanor's mind raced. What did he want? And why was he calling her now? The man's voice was calm but cold. "Meet me at the park at noon today. There's something you need to know." Eleanor didn't hesitate. She knew this was her chance to uncover the truth. But a deep sense of dread settled in her stomach. She had come this far, but now she wasn't sure what she was about to face. She returned to her window once more, gazing at House 14, now eerily empty. The street was quiet, as it always was at night, but something about it felt different. The mystery that had been lingering in the neighborhood seemed to have reached its peak. Whatever had been hidden was about to come to light. The following morning, Eleanor received an unexpected phone call. "Hello, Eleanor," a deep voice said on the other end. "I think it's time we talk." It was the man in the black suit. Eleanor's mind raced. What did he want? And why was he calling her now? The man's voice was calm but cold. "Meet me at the park at noon today. There's something you need to know." Eleanor didn't hesitate. She knew this was her chance to uncover the truth. But a deep sense of dread settled in her stomach. She had come this far, but now she wasn't sure what she was about to face. The moment the phone call ended, Eleanor's hands trembled. She had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of everything was sinking in. She had spent weeks piecing together the mystery, but now the man in the black suit wanted to meet, and she had no idea what was about to unfold. She glanced at the clock. It was already past 10 a.m. She had 2 hours to prepare. She quickly changed into a dark coat, something that wouldn't draw attention, and grabbed her phone. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing she could trust in this situation. She needed answers, and she was determined to get them. The park was quiet when she arrived. There weren't many people around, just a few walkers and joggers enjoying the morning air. Eleanor's heart raced as she moved cautiously through the park, her eyes scanning for any sign of the man in the black suit. The meeting spot was near the far end of the park, by the old oak tree. She could see the silhouette of a man standing under its branches, his back to her. He was tall, dressed in the same black suit, his posture rigid, as though he was waiting for someone. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She walked slowly toward him, trying to keep her nerves under control. When she was a few feet away, he turned and locked eyes with her. There was no sign of surprise on his face, only a quiet, almost calculating gaze. "Eleanor," the man said, his voice low but firm. "I'm glad you came." Eleanor nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I need answers. I need to know what's going on with your family. What's really happening here?" The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. He glanced around the park, as if checking to make sure they weren't being watched. Then, with a slight nod, he motioned for her to sit on the bench beside him. "You've asked a lot of questions, Eleanor," he said, his tone steady, "and I'm going to give you some answers. But you may not like what you hear." Eleanor sat down next to him, her body tense. She couldn't back out now. She had to hear the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. The man took a deep breath before continuing. "You've been right about some things and wrong about others. But most importantly, you need to understand that not everything is as it seems." Eleanor felt a chill run through her. "What do you mean? What's really going on?" He looked at her, his eyes sharp. "My name is Victor Morgan. I'm not just any businessman. And the woman you've been spying on is my wife, Samantha Morgan. Eleanor felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had been right about the mystery surrounding the couple, but now it was clear. It was much bigger than she had imagined. Victor paused for a moment, as if considering how much to reveal. Then he leaned forward slightly, his voice low. Samantha didn't come here for a quiet life. She came because she's part of something much larger, something dangerous. Eleanor's mind raced. What are you talking about? What is she involved in? Victor's eyes darkened. I wish I could say she didn't have a choice. But the truth is, she's connected to a group that's been operating in the shadows for years. A group with power, influence, and money. You've seen the people she's been dealing with. The men in black suits. They don't just work for me, Eleanor. They work for a network of powerful people who control more than you could ever imagine. Eleanor's thoughts were spinning. So, your family. All of this. It's all a front. Victor nodded slowly. In a way, yes. Samantha is trying to protect you and the rest of the neighborhood from what we've been forced to deal with. She was trying to live quietly, hoping the past would stay buried. But now that you've discovered too much, you're at risk. Eleanor's mind was racing. At risk? From what? Victor's face hardened. From them. The people behind the group. The ones who won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to keep their secrets hidden. And that's why Samantha was leaving. We've been trying to move her out of here, out of the city, but now it's too late. Eleanor's head was spinning. She had thought it was just about a strange couple, maybe some hidden past. But this was something else entirely. The world she had known, the quiet neighborhood, the normal life, was nothing more than an illusion. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Eleanor asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Why didn't you warn anyone? Victor shook his head. We couldn't risk it. The fewer people who know, the safer they are. The truth is, Samantha's life is in danger. And if you're still asking questions, you're in danger too. Eleanor took a deep breath, trying to process everything. So what now? What are we supposed to do? Victor's gaze softened for the first time. We leave. You leave. Go back to your life. Eleanor, forget about this. If you don't, they'll come for you. And if they do, they won't stop until they get what they want. Eleanor didn't know if she could just walk away from everything she had learned, from everything that was still unclear. But something inside her knew he was right. She had already seen too much. She couldn't just walk away and pretend nothing had happened. But she also couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. There was still too much left unsaid. Victor stood up, his posture stiff again. I've told you enough, Eleanor. I hope you understand. I hope you can leave this behind. Eleanor watched him for a long moment. I don't know if I can. Not yet. Victor nodded, his expression unreadable. You don't have a choice. With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the park, leaving Eleanor sitting alone on the bench, her heart heavy with the weight of the secrets she had uncovered. Eleanor sat there, alone on the bench, her mind spinning with everything Victor had said. The weight of the truth was almost too much to bear. She had learned more than she ever expected to know. And yet, the answers only led to more questions. She had always thought her life was simple. She had a job, a home, a quiet routine. But now, everything had changed. The neighborhood that once seemed so safe now felt like a trap. The man in the black suit, his words still echoed in her ears. You're at risk. And she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the danger wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone she cared about. As she sat on the bench, the quiet park around her felt more like a battlefield, a place where decisions were made and lives changed forever. Eleanor stood up, shaking off the heavy thoughts that clouded her mind. She couldn't stay here, lost in her own fear. She had to figure out what to do next. What did she really want? To walk away, to leave it all behind. Her thoughts kept coming back to one thing: Samantha. The woman who had been trying to protect the people around her, trying to live a quiet life, hoping no one would uncover the dangerous secrets. Eleanor knew she couldn't just forget everything she had learned. She wasn't the kind of person who could turn a blind eye. The danger was real. She had seen it in Victor's eyes, heard it in his voice. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't just pretend this wasn't happening. There was a fight to be had. As she walked out of the park, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Margaret. "Margaret, are you okay? I'm worried about you. I haven't heard from you all day." Eleanor stopped in her tracks, staring at the message. She could feel the weight of everything. Margaret, her friends, her family. What would happen if they got involved? Would they be in danger too? She couldn't risk that. She quickly typed a response. "Eleanor, I'm fine. Just trying to figure out what to do next." But even as she sent the message, she knew she wasn't fine. Not really. The truth was, she didn't have the answers. But she couldn't stop now. She had to find a way to stop whatever was coming. The next morning, Eleanor returned to the street where House 14 stood. She had to see it again, even though her mind told her she should walk away. She had already put herself at risk. Why continue? But she had this feeling, this unshakable feeling that if she didn't find a way to stop what was happening, it would consume everything. She watched as cars passed, as people went about their business. And then she saw it. A black car was parked outside House 14. The same car from before. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know if she should approach, but something told her to move closer. She had to know what was going on. Just then, the door to House 14 opened. Victor stepped out, his eyes scanning the street. He was holding a phone in one hand, but he didn't see her. His face was tense, his movements quick, as if he was preparing for something. Eleanor's instinct told her to turn and leave, but she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath and walked toward him. Victor looked up as she approached, his eyes narrowing when he saw her. "You should be careful, Eleanor," he said quietly, his voice stern. "I told you to leave it alone." "I can't," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling in her chest. "I need to know what's going to happen. What's going on with your wife? With all of this?" Victor glanced at the house, his expression unreadable. "You still don't understand. It's too dangerous." "I understand more than you think," Eleanor said. "And I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. All of it." Victor sighed deeply, his gaze flickering with something like regret. "This isn't a fight you want to be in, Eleanor. But since you're so determined." He paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Samantha is a part of something that goes back decades. Her family is deeply tied to this network. And they've done things that can't be undone. The only reason they're trying to get her out is because the people behind this won't stop until they have control of everything." Eleanor listened, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of his words, but she wasn't backing down. "Then we need to stop them," she said, her voice fierce. "We need to expose them." Victor looked at her for a long moment. For the first time, Eleanor saw a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You're braver than I gave you credit for," he said quietly. "But you need to be prepared. This won't be easy. There are people out there who won't hesitate to destroy anyone in their way. And they have resources you can't even imagine." Eleanor nodded. "I don't care. I'm ready." Victor stepped back, his gaze cold again. "Fine. But remember this. You can't undo the choices you've made. Once you're in, there's no going back." Eleanor nodded once more, her determination solid. "I'm in." As Eleanor turned and walked away, her heart was heavy with the weight of her decision. But she knew it was the right one. The fight was just beginning, and no matter how dangerous it was, she couldn't walk away now. She had seen too much, and now it was time to make a choice, to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost.